Hello world of YouTube, considering we are in the realms of the middle of the 2020s, I figured I would spend this week doing a mini list week of breaking down my favorite games and albums that have dropped so far this decade, with today being the video about games and tomorrow being the video about albums. Now, as far as gaming this decade goes, there have been a lot of really good releases, honestly, and some new ideas and some new takes on genres that have really been lovely to see. I think that devs have still been pushing boundaries, doing fun stuff within the medium that I absolutely adore. I think that, especially in the realms of indies, I have been eating as a lover of indie games. So many good things dropping, but also some great high-budget stuff as well. Give it a like if you're excited. There's not much preamble to discuss. Let's just start talking about the great games. A good chunk of this video is going to be me mostly updating you on my opinions on games that I've included in year-end lists that I've done over the last handful of years this decade, even if I've played other games that have come out that I didn't include in those lists after those years have passed. They still haven't topped anything I've put on my respective year-end lists. This will just kind of contextualize parts of the list and maybe shock you with what is above what, because recency bias may be a big component of why I'm putting Crow Country here, but it is a world that I cannot stop thinking about. So much so that I've ranked this above the likes of the last Pokemon game that I still think is being a little bit too harshly criticized, the recent Splatoon game that I've still enjoyed playing in recent months, and other indie smashes that I've enjoyed like Dredge. Crow Country sees you in this well-crafted little nugget of a world. I love the illusions of the grander horrors so very much in this game, and it very much evokes a sort of deep-seated unnervingness when walking around this park as Mara Forest. I love the way this world unfolds before you. I really love the storytelling throughout the world itself. I just think that this is a great game. I cannot wait to see what this team does next. I just think that this is a lovely, lovely spooky time that I still cannot recommend enough. While I may have still not started up the messenger, I feel like, a little bit closer to wanting to play it than I was when I originally included it on my best of 2023 list, when I was talking about how much I enjoyed Sea of Stars. A game that I still see getting updates that intrigue me in the background, but I haven't found myself going back to this world, even if I still think that it's got some great characters, great character moments, showcases of character growth, and an interesting pockets of lore that it decides to sprinkle out throughout this fantasy setting. I also still really adore the combat system of this game, and the soundtrack is something that I still think about from time to time, considering just how choice each of the music compositions are. I'm not one to replay RPGs often. This is something you'll hear me say a lot in some of the upcoming entries, but I think that this game has features added to it that entice me to want to go back, especially in the lanes of co-op and the like. I think that this is a really interesting game that I think would be fun to play with friends, and I think that if you want to go on a really emotional journey with your friends, this could be something fun to do. Guys, I think I kind of like being in my 30s. I'm not gonna lie. Sure, I'm aging, and I can feel that mentally and physically, especially since I have a job that can be very physical. But I still think I'm trying to take the steps as they come. One character that I think might be basking really well in their 30s is Kirby, though, considering they have a new game on the horizon that I personally am pretty hyped for, but also had a great start to their third decade with Kirby in the Forgotten Land, a really cute, well-crafted adventure that I also still think about a couple years removed from its release. I've gone back and played some of the post-game, and while it is very much like the meaty, intense portion of the game, it feels well-deserved after the adventure that you've gone through. I also, when going back and looking at the Waddle Dee world that I built, I loved going through the village and playing the other mini-games. There's a lot to this game that has some nice meat and potatoes that I think makes for a well-rounded, fruitful adventure. I think that if you like Kirby games, or if you know someone younger and you want to give them a fun platformer game that isn't too hard but has enough going on that it can feel pretty engaging, Kirby and the Forgotten Land is a great place to go. It is a really good game that came out later in the Switch's lifespan, and I'm excited to see what new things come out in the Switch 2 version when I decide to finally get a Switch 2, but as the base game stands, I think that it is that fucking good. Maybe it's because I really am hyped for Mina the Hollower to finally release the next game developed by Yacht Club Games, or maybe it's because I knew I really liked it upon release and knew I was making this video, but I went back to Mechanical Head's Cyber Shadow a couple of months ago and again while making this video to sort of look around the map after I've beaten the game, revisit levels, look for secrets, explore the world with the powers that I have in the way that they intended me to. And I really thought it was a lot of fun. I could tell they actually put a lot of work into the world as a whole by letting you comb back through it this way to get all the collectibles and find the secrets and the like. There is a challenge that is there that wasn't felt the first time going through the levels that I really appreciated, while also still loving the soundtrack, the controls, the story in hindsight, and the world as it was throughout the narrative. There's a lot of really cool set pieces and boss fights that I still think about. I think that it is a great 2D action game. And if you're wanting a good dystopian future ninja game while you wait for the newest Shinobi and the newest Ninja Gaiden to release, I highly recommend Cyber Shadow, because I think that it is an absolute smash. This is another case of recency bias. I really like the newest Prince of Persia a lot. I can actually do something interesting in the 15th spot in this list, because for as much as I thought Monster Hunter Wilds was certainly an attempt at doing a blockbuster-style presentation within the franchise, doing story forward first with this open world to get you sort of antiquated in it before the post-game settles in and you really get into the grind of it all, I find myself really enjoying Monster Hunter Rise from a couple of years ago infinitely more because of some of the streamlining that happens in Wilds, especially with the mounts in that game. I feel like there is a stripping back of freedom for the player that isn't really felt in Rise, but that sort of approach to presenting the game is also something that I prefer in Rise, because it is a lot more open with what it lets you do off the rip in that game as well. Yes, I haven't played the Sunbreak DLC, but I have done a lot of the stuff in the game, and I still have had zero desire to go back and actually do the 5-star stuff in full in Wilds. I plan to at some point, because I did really enjoy my time with that game, and I still like the charm that it has similarly to Rise. I think the game is also very gorgeous. I think they improved upon some of the visual style in Rise and gave it a fuller look. I just really loved the parts of Rise that were new, especially stuff that's missing in this, like mounting the monsters. I think that that is a really fun mechanic that I may get why isn't in this game, because there aren't wire bugs, but the wire bugs themselves were an interesting component of the traversal that I thought was an interesting sort of change of pace for a game that was a little more methodical, sure, but I think had its own fast pace to it that I think just opened that up for the other players in your party. You know, sometimes a game will honestly just improve for me if I get obsessed with it to a large degree. And considering I both streamed a majority of the post-game for New Game Plus for Rollerdrome, and then in my free time replayed it so that I can platinum it on the PS5, along with writing a rap song in this game's universe on my last mixtape. Hopped a ramp, changed a mag, cocked back, and I blasted. Put his ass in a casket, then I won the match with a slug shot to a mech bitch, doing dumb shit in the Rollerdrome. I hope that the Roll7 team is doing well. I hope that they are all employed and doing something that they want to do, because they made a hell of a game in Rollerdrome. I think that this game is magnificent, and I think that this game harmonizes two different gameplay styles so well that it really creates a palpable desire for more once you beat the main story. But I think that by the time you platinum it, I at least felt absolutely satisfied with my experience. I used one of the clips from me beating one of the games in New Game Plus in my free time as a bumper for this channel. I absolutely love this game's visual palette. I love its art style. I just love everything about this game so very much. And I hate that this team is no longer a thing, because I think that they are capable of some good shit if this is what they made with such a small team. Rest in peace to Roll7. You guys deserved infinitely better. Watching the Animal Well documentary published by Second Wind, it honestly gave me the same feeling that watching Indie Game the movie did, and I mean that in like a really nice way. I like all the games that were the products of Indie Game the movie, and I think that they are a great showcasing of like small teams leading personality-driven games, and I think that Animal Well is another absolutely classic example of that. 6 months removed, I haven't been less obsessed with this game. I just haven't gone back to it for fear of falling into the well and having a hard time getting out. I am mystified by this game still. I think that it's fantastic. I think that it is an interesting little nugget that one could easily be obsessed with if you like indie platformers, especially ones from the late aughts, like I described from Indie Game the movie. This game rips. Billy Basso, you rule. Look, Elden Ring is so good that it's still my 12th best game of the decade so far. Even if I haven't beaten it, which means I haven't played the DLC, it's because the game is that much fun to play. It has all of the components I love from the Souls-likes that I've played, but does them just so fucking well. It has a relationship with world exploration that is unlike the other games due to its scale, openness, and the like. It almost gives you a lack of security in the same way the combat does. I think that the deeper horrors that lie within the corners of this are also just as well done as the more grandeur and spectacle moments. I think that the enemy design in this game is c'est magnifique. And then this game is just choice as hell, and obviously, a lot of people know that this game has got nothing but accolades since it's released, and it's absolutely worth it. One genre you may be shocked to know doesn't have a whole lot of representation on this list are roguelikes. I love a good roguelike, you guys know that, but this decade when it comes to making some like true GOAT material, it's only had a couple games drop that have really scratched that itch in a way that I think does so very well. And Risk of Rain 2 is absolutely one of them. One of those examples of a game finally going public in spite of being maybe throughout development over the last handful of years publicly prior to 2020. Risk of Rain 2 is the type of evolution from 2D to 3D I think rivals other games that happened during like the 90s. It is such a graceful transition that I think is such a great gameplay loop. The dense chaos, the builds that you can make, the fact that it's fun to play by yourself or with friends. It is absolutely a wonderful game that I still see getting updates, getting a lot of things added to this already deep well of mystery that I think rivals a game like Animal Well, but just has a much more action focus that I think all just makes for a fun gameplay loop. Love this game. Absolutely adore it. And again, if you want a good action roguelike, can't go wrong with this. For all the praise I gave to the large vastness within the crevices of Elden Ring, I like Another Crab's Treasure as a Souls-like more, if only because I think that the melding of platforming with the Souls-like, while maybe not as like big as in Elden Ring, what it does here is effective for its charm and style. I think that the story focus is a nice touch to this type of game that doesn't detract from how meaty everything else about it. The Souls-likiness isn't lost with the focus on a plot, and I absolutely loved it about it. I love the level design, I love the variety in shells, and I like the growth of your character throughout the game. It's just a wonderful adventure. Again, I called it like one of my new recent favorite games of all time, because I think that it has like potential to reach those heights. I think that the Aggro Crab team made an absolute gem in this. Again, recency bias, I just talked about this, but you should absolutely play Another Crab's Treasure. I was like a lot of the Zelda fandom in that I was a little disappointed in parts of Tears of the Kingdom, especially considering how great and tight Breath of the Wild was as a whole package, especially considering the opening, but I was shocked to see how much of the fandom was so critical of the game, and I was not necessarily against that ideology, but I don't necessarily hate it all that much either as a whole package. Yeah, the beginning is a bit slow, and I don't like repeating it, and the end has some stumbles to get to the finish line, but that finish line is some of the most hype shit in this series. I love this map. I haven't actually gone back and played it in full, but the magic between those hurdles is some hype shit that I loved experiencing. Almost as much as Breath of the Wild, honestly, if not more so. I'd compare it from like Zelda 1 to Zelda 2, honestly. The world of Breath of the Wild is as chaotic and unhinged as Zelda 1, whereas Tears of the Kingdom's world is still chaotic like Zelda 2's, but it's reined in some very specific ways that I think lend to just as fruitful of an experience, maybe, to those that love Zelda 2 like they do Zelda 1, but
there's a disconnect for me there because I don't like Zelda 2 as much as Zelda 1. Tears of the Kingdom, though, I think is as good as Breath of the Wild because it keeps a lot of the components of Breath of the Wild that are as good then as they are now, with a world that just has more going on, and I think is a much more fruitful experience that is fun to comb through. Sure, it's got its stumbles, but so does Breath of the Wild, admittedly, at the end of the day. Look, I know it's kind of comparing apples to oranges to compare a game like Tears of the Kingdom to Doom Eternal, and I just talked about Doom Eternal being my favorite of the newest trilogy, so you could probably guess that it was going to be at this point on the list. But if we're being honest, if the other parts of Doom Eternal didn't exist, its multiplayer is that bad, then it might have been put below Tears of the Kingdom. But the gameplay loop being this good, the level design being this choice, and all of the other features like the decent enough horde mode and the DLC make for it as a still fantastic shooter 5 years later. I just talked about Doom Eternal in a video recently, so you guys know I already love it. It just happens to be at this point on the list.
Thanks to Crash Thompson, I got to see the Indianapolis Pacers beat the Oklahoma City Thunder in Game 6 of the NBA Finals live, which was my first NBA game, and Shake described it as a potential canon event where I would become a basketball guy. I don't know if that's going to happen. But I did think that there was some energy there that was palpable, and it was a great game and a lot of fun and an insane event to be at.
The parallel I'm drawing from that story to this script is that Street Fighter VI was more my gateway into the competitive fighting scene within Street Fighter, and I absolutely ate that shit the fuck up. As somebody who's always been a fan of these games, even if I've loved some of the Mortal Kombats more than some of the Street Fighters over the years, I think that Street Fighter VI makes a great case for a classic entry in the franchise, if only because its small adaptations it made to its engine make for a vastly different approach for some characters, switch up the meta in ways that have made for an interesting thing to watch evolve. I've also loved the DLC characters they've dropped for this game. I've actually sank more time in the story, and I finally got to Ken, and I absolutely adore where the story goes. Street Fighter VI is an all-timer, I think, if you give it enough time. I think that it's had a hell of a run so far, and I've loved to see where it's gone. It's crawled up my own personal list for favorite games in its genre, and I can't imagine it not going even higher than where it is now, in my personal opinion.
This is where I currently am in my new Game Plus playthrough of the Resi 4 remake. I've talked about this game at length. I still love this remake. I think it's a phenomenal version of my current favorite game of all time. I love the changes still. I think that it's just peak gameplay-wise. It's absolutely one of the best remakes I've played in a long time, and that's saying something considering we've had a handful of really stellar remakes come out in the gaming sphere in the last couple of years. Still fantastic, still phenomenal time, still no real notes, so to speak. It is magnificent. When I replayed through Final Fantasy Tactics earlier this year, it did nothing but increase my urges to replay Triangle Strategy and dive back into the world of Norzelia and fix the aforementioned late-game changes that happened within characters that plagued my first playthrough that still linger in my mind as these years have dwindled on by. I still love the combat system in this game, though. I still love the world that they thrust you into. The level design is great and showcases those deepenings of gameplay to your typical tactical game that I think is also really good. Can't get enough of this game. Again, I don't replay RPGs much, so my desire to replay this should showcase how much I really love this adventure. I may have only ever gotten to the end of Act 2 in Baldur's Gate 3 because that end of that act is fucking impossible, but the difference in my playthroughs of Act 1 with both playthroughs I started alone made it like this impressive feat of a game. It's such an RPG-ass RPG in the best way possible. It is a game deep and rich with its simple mechanics that just makes it infinitely replayable, whether by yourself or with your friends. The relationships you can build with your party are also insanely vast and different. I just really love the meat and potatoes of this very meat and potatoes driven game. It is so good from a combat, from a dialogue, from a character perspective. Everything about this game is aces. It is easily one of the most captivating RPGs and heralded RPGs in recent years for good reason. There's so many different ways you could tackle every mission, and I absolutely love that about it. I'll beat it someday. I just gotta get over the hurdle I'm at first.
Shake is now addicted to Balatro. I have now officially played this game twice at the same time, and it hurt my brain. But man, do I love seeing that number go up. There's no side of me getting unaddicted to this game anytime soon now. This game is amazing. You all know that. This game has left the internet space over the last year. It's fucking awesome. Shout out to Local Thunk. You rip, man. I feel like as a Metroid fan, I've been eating pretty solidly, even if I've only gotten one actual release and one right around the corner. Metroid Dread really was that good of a game, man. I've done the boss rush mode now, and I think that that's a hell of a good time. I absolutely adore the game, the way this game progresses still. I think that as far as a Metroidvania approach goes, it's different enough where it felt fresh. It has easily the most hype ending to any game in the series that has stuck with me since it's been in the rear view. This game rips. This game absolutely is worth it. As a longtime fan of this franchise, I feel nourished. Thank you to the dev team that made this. This thing is primo. Bomb Rush Cyberfunk has integrated its way into my life more so than any other game on this list. I could not put the game down until I combed through the entire map on the Switch port. It just went free on the PlayStation Store last month, so I'm going to be doing the same in it relatively soon. I may not have bought the vinyl pressing of the soundtrack that's out there yet, but I have bought Swami Sounds back in the day because he's on the Bomb Rush Cyberfunk soundtrack, and his song and this album are fucking mint. Shout out to Swami Sound. I've used songs from this soundtrack in bumpers. The style of this game is everything I love, with its inspiration taken to a different world altogether. I love the character focus in its narrative still. I think that is a nice package that, yeah, I wish were longer, but the time that I'm sitting with it, I can't help but think it is absolutely my favorite game I played in the 2020s so far. And that, everybody, is gonna be the video. Did you like it? If you did, be sure you give it a like. And let me know your thoughts on it in the comments down below, if you did or did not like it. And along with some of your favorite games you've played this decade so far. If you want to see more of what I got going on, consider subscribing. I drop 2 to 4 videos a week depending on what I've got going on normally. I did drop 2 last week, but they were not at all the schedule I was hoping to make. This is supposed to drop last week. And the production of it was so crazily shitty, I should say, that it halted production on a handful of other videos I was working on that I plan on dropping this week as a thank you for sticking around. I got a lot more dense music-related stuff dropping, mostly, with the playthroughs dropping later in the week. Pokemon and F-Zero will still drop this week, just not when they're supposed to. Well, F-Zero might, but Pokemon definitely will not, considering it's the end of Monday. But thanks for watching this again. I'm gonna go. Thank you again so very much for watching. I'm the Battle Rack. You guys have good days, lives, and situations, and I will see you another day.